Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, folks, hope everyone's having a great day. Friday, almost weekend time. I woke up to the news that Alan Dershowitz is joining Donald Trump's defense team. And to be honest with you, it sickens me. It really sickens me. Donald Trump, he's obviously a piece of shit as well. They're all pieces of shit. Anybody that associates with Epstein is in that category, in my opinion. And then to bring on Alan Dershowitz, who is under fire for his role in Epstein's trafficking ring and for allegedly abusing Virginia Roberts, you're going to bring this guy on to defend you and think that nobody's going to call you out? Well, maybe your rabid base won't call you out, but the rest of us will. This is absolutely, positively disgusting, and I will never, listen to me, folks, I will never, ever vote for somebody who brings Alan Dershowitz onto their legal team, all right? Now, if Alan Dershowitz was cleared of his crimes, fine. That's a whole different story. But for him to bring a guy like Alan Dershowitz onto the legal team when he definitely knows, I don't want to hear shit that Trump doesn't know about the allegations made by Virginia Roberts towards Alan Dershowitz. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that shit. Trump knows, okay? And to bring this man on, it's a thumb in the eye to not only anybody who's following the case, but to the victims themselves. And it's absolutely reprehensible, and it needs to be talked about with utter and true scorn, because it's just beyond the pale, folks. I've told you all from the very beginning, I don't care about either side of the aisle at this point. Both sides are absolutely disgusting to me. They both make me sick, and they both need to be fired. Both sides of the aisle, all of them. But this, to sully the office of the presidency by bringing on a guy who's being accused of raping a girl? I mean, come on, dude. What world are we living in, folks? Is this the kind of country you thought that we would be living in? Certainly not the kind of country I thought we would be living in when I was growing up. You know, I was always under the impression that people like Alan Dershowitz, they have to stand tall and, you know, face the music. But again, a man like Dershowitz being accused of these heinous acts by a very, 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 very credible witness, folks, all right? Do they get more credible than Virginia Roberts? I mean, she's probably the most credible witness I've ever listened to speak about something like this. And never mind her bravery. And to put Alan Dershowitz onto your legal team, where these victims are going to have to look at this ugly face every single day, this crypt keeper's face every single day, because we know that it's going to be wall-to-wall coverage of this impeachment hearing. We know that. And to tell you the truth, at this point now, I hope he does get impeached. I hope they do get rid of him at this point. If you want to have Jeffrey Epstein's buddy as your legal advice and your legal counselor, we are not homies, Mr. Trump. Believe that. Now, that said, I don't think any of the whack jobs on the left are going to do a better job either. So I'm done with all of it, right? The straw that broke the camel's back for me was just this morning with Dershowitz joining Trump's legal team. That's the end of it for me. Donald Trump lost whatever support from me that he would ever have, and I truly feel bad for these victims to have to see this every single day. This guy get trotted out and put on a pedestal, this Dershowitz character. And again, Donald Trump is enabling another. Sorry, folks, I know some of you don't want to hear this, but these are facts, all right? By Donald Trump bringing Alan Dershowitz onto his team, he's enabling Dershowitz, and he's giving him credibility in the face of the allegations against him. So, I'll tell you what, as far as Donald Trump goes, you could throw him in the pile with the rest of them as far as I'm concerned. They're all disgusting, they're all reprehensible, and none of them care about the victims. Not one of these people care about the victims. And from here on, from going forward from here, I'll tell you what, I hope that the documents are released, and I hope that Alan Dershowitz's name is prominently stamped all over that stuff, and then I hope that the boomerang effect comes back and smashes Trump right in his face, because that's what he deserves. All right, folks, we're going to jump into our article today, And this article has to do with the government finally apologizing to Epstein's victims, but at the same time defending the immunity deal that it gave out to Epstein and the co-conspirators. So this is an article from the Courthouse News, and the author is Izzy Kapnick. The article was published on January 16th. In the 11th Circuit, government prosecutors at long last uttered the word sorry in open court to victims of Jeffrey Epstein's underage sex ring after years of refusing to apologize for keeping them in the dark about a deal that protected the wealthy money manager, pedophile, from federal charges. Well, isn't that nice? The government is just so great. They finally decided to say sorry for throwing these girls under the bus. Boy, isn't that awesome. The government, they really are a bunch of great people over there in the federal prosecutor's office, aren't there? Just a bunch of just incredibly awesome people. The apology was issued during a Thursday morning appellate proceeding in Miami, attended by Courtney Wild, who says Epstein sexually abused her at his mansion when she was 14 years old. Again, folks, every time I read stuff like this, 14 years old, 13 years old, 11 years old, it makes me so sad. Imagine, because I remember being that age. I remember being that age. I remember how the world was, I was going to be a professional football player. The whole world was mine to take. And I can't even imagine the rug being pulled out from under me by some sick, demented pervert the way her whole world was shook up. I mean, are you kidding me right now? She and her lawyers were in court to challenge a federal judge's decision to preserve the 2007 deal, which gave Epstein and his assistants immunity from federal sex crime charges in South Florida. The government should have communicated to Ms. Wild in a straightforward way. We are genuinely sorry, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jill Steinberg said, apologizing for her predecessor's mistreatment of victims. Since they're genuinely sorry, we could all move on now, folks. They're genuinely sorry, so it's okay. No, it's not okay, and take your sorry and shove it. We want movement in the case, all right? We want everybody involved that got that plush plea deal, the immunity because of Jeffrey Epstein, we want that thrown in the trash, and we want all of them to face the music. Wild's longtime lawyer, Bradley Edwards, said outside the courthouse that while Wild welcomes the government repentance, she wants more concrete relief. Citing the government's admitted violations of the Crime Victims' Rights Act, Edwards said that the clear remedy is to rescind the non-prosecution agreement. Hallelujah. That is obviously what should happen. All right? It was not granted in good faith. Okay? The prosecution agreement was not granted in good faith, and it needs to be overturned, and everybody named in those documents, and everybody named as a co-conspirator needs to have a very speedy trial and then harsh punishment. The government told the appellate panel that the Crime Victims' Rights Act provides a means for disenfranchised victims to challenge plea bargains, not non-prosecution agreements like Epstein's. Steinberg claimed that because federal prosecutors never filed a formal charging document, the Act's rescission remedies do not apply. Look, it's such legalese, right? They're using loopholes. The government is using loopholes so that they don't have to do their job. Again, fire them all and bring in new people. I've had enough. Honestly, folks, I've had enough with all of these institutions, all of these federal government institutions, all of these supposed law offices and places where, the Justice Department, the FBI, I don't have any faith in any of them. Sorry. Edwards said after the hearing that the government's stance amounts to using a legal loophole to sidestep victims' rights. That's exactly what I just said. It's definitely a loophole. It's definitely a legal loophole. These guys, they know the law inside and out. They wrote the laws, basically. So they know how to skirt to the side when they don't want to prosecute. This is an argument the government has been making for some time. They're saying, we never formally indicted, so we didn't have to treat the victims with dignity, Edwards said. Well, they didn't do that. They didn't treat the victims with any dignity at all, and they still aren't treating them with dignity to this day. And it's offensive to see. It's just offensive to see the way the government is still treating these victims of Jeffrey Epstein and his pals. Epstein, who rubbed shoulders with the richest of the rich in the Palm Beach social scene, members of the British royal family, and Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, died in August 2019 while in custody on new sex crime charges filed in New York. His death was deemed a suicide by a New York City medical examiner, though a forensic pathologist hired by his brother argued that his injuries suggested homicide. And we talked about that yesterday, the burst capillaries. I'm not going to rehash all of that stuff. We all know where we're at there. But come on. Epstein killed himself, huh? Okay. In the old Florida criminal case, Epstein was accused of luring more than 30 underage girls to his Palm Beach mansion and coercing them into sexual activity in a massage room that his aides allegedly helped him set up and maintain. He cut the 2007 deal with the Southern District of Florida's prosecutors, under which he pleaded guilty to a state charge of soliciting underage prostitution in exchange for assurances that he would not be federally charged. Every time I read that, it makes me mad too. Underage prostitution. What? It's not even a thing. If you're underage, how can you consent? How can you be a prostitute if you're underage? Just another way to try and sully these girls. Epstein served roughly a year in prison. He was allowed to leave his cell and spend daytime in an office under a work release program. In February 2019, 11 years deep into Wild's lawsuit against the government, U.S. District Judge Kenneth Mara, a George W. Bush appointee, found that federal prosecutors violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act by concealing Epstein's deal from victims as plea negotiations played out, and even after the deal was signed. That right there is enough to bring these prosecutors in and charge them, in my opinion. Talk about a dereliction of duty. You're gonna go after Tova Noel and the other guard, I forget his name, Michael Thomas, I believe. Yeah, Michael Thomas and Tova Noel because they fell asleep on the job, but the whole entire government violated the Crimes Victims' Rights Act, and no big deal, right? Nobody gets punished. We'll just move on. Must be nice to make the law. Must be nice to not to have to follow the law, too. Last September, Mara granted virtually no relief to Wild and the other plaintiff, however. He found that their demand to nullify Epstein's immunity in Florida was made moot when Epstein died. Boy, isn't that convenient. Boy, isn't that convenient for Judge Mara, a George W. Bush appointee. Interesting. I wonder how many rounds of golf Mara has played with Epstein's people. As for the assistants who allegedly helped Epstein lure underage girls to the Palm Beach mansion, Judge Mara found that the court couldn't void their immunity because they were never parties to Wild's litigation. Again, more legalese, more loopholes. Basically what he's saying is, you have no recourse, you're screwed. It's basically what the judge is saying. Wild's attorneys argued Thursday that if the co-conspirators needed to be brought into the litigation for Judge Mara to grant relief, then the judge could have and should have ordered a joinder. Case law establishes that if a joinder problem arises in granting relief, the proper response is not to terminate the case, but rather to direct that any necessary missing parties be joined, lawyer Paul Cassell argued. In any event, Cassell claimed the co-conspirators were nothing more than indirect beneficiaries of the Epstein non-prosecution agreement. Judge Mara's findings that they need to be brought into the litigation was consequently untenable, Cassell said. The deal, which was not signed by the alleged cohorts, reads, oh wow, that's crazy. So it was not signed by the people that are being protected by it. How is it a binding document? If you or I don't sign something, there's no way that it's going to be a binding document. But all of a sudden, because it involves Jeffrey Epstein and his circle of witches, that's all good. Don't even worry about it. You go ahead and write it on a napkin. We'll write out our contract on a napkin. No big deal. What? What does this even mean? The United States agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein. And look at that, folks. Are you kidding me with that huge, widespread immunity deal there of any co-conspirators of Epstein? Oh, I wonder why Alan Dershowitz would have it written that way, huh? I wonder if Alan Dershowitz is one of those co-conspirators that is protected. Makes you think, folks. The agreement mentions Epstein's assistants, Sarah Kellen, Nadia Marcinkova, and Leslie Groff by name. Okay, all three of them, right? plus Ghislaine Maxwell, all need to be arrested, all need to be slapped with RICO charges, and all need to be put under a federal prison for the rest of their lives. The government maintains that the victims' attorneys, not the court itself, were responsible for initiating an action to bring the alleged conspirators into the litigation. The Department of Justice, how about we call it the Department of Injustice from here on out, is also claiming that victims' rights under the CVRA were vindicated when they spoke their piece at a New York criminal proceeding last year. Wow. Are you kidding me right now? Because they had their chance to have their say that it's all good. The CVRA was vindicated. Wrong. An investigation by New York prosecutors may still yield charges against Epstein's alleged cohorts, Steinberg said. The appellate panel balked at that reasoning. How does the New York proceeding have any bearing on whether the Southern District made a mistake in this case? Asked Senior U.S. Circuit Judge Gerald Bard Toflat, a Gerald Ford appointee. A Gerald Ford appointee? Come on, man. Time to retire, Judge Gerald Bard Toflat. Time for you to retire. Pack it in. Get your nice, 10-gallon hat, your cowboy boots, and head to Florida. Oh, wait. You're in Florida already. Time to retire, sir. The government's argument about potential infringements on prosecutorial discretion gained more traction among the panel. Judge Toflat was concerned that if the Crime Victims' Rights Act is interpreted too broadly, it could be a slippery slope as far as judicial interference with prosecutors' day-to-day decisions on whether to prosecute a suspect. The judge referenced the old refrain, "Once the camel gets his nose in the tent, his body will soon follow." Okay, boomer. Castle tried to allay the panel's concerns in an exchange that at times grew terse. He said that his client is asking for a narrow decision on violations of victims' rights in the end stage of plea negotiations, a ruling that would not pose an existential threat to prosecutors' executive powers. Also on appeal is Judge Mara's denial of Wild's request for various documents from the criminal case, including grand jury records and deliberations within the Department of Justice regarding the decision not to prosecute Epstein. Though the Department of Justice admitted to Judge Mara in 2019 that it failed to confer with the victims about the non-prosecution agreement, it stopped short of issuing an apology to Wild at that time. Until this morning, the department had taken the position that saying sorry was not a good remedy. Folks, here we are. All the way from where we were at to where we are now, and these girls are still being screwed around by the courts. You would think that the courts would want to unseal this stuff and they would want to get this case, to see the light of day. But more roadblocks and more hurdles. So let's just hope that, Bradley Edwards and the lawyer team for these girls continues to fight the good fight, and eventually these judges see the light. So, all right, folks. Again, frustrating. It's frustrating to read stuff like this. It's frustrating to read that this stuff was even done in the first place. This shouldn't even be a thing. We shouldn't even be here. All of these people should have been prosecuted, and they should all be in prison. But instead, these girls are forced to wake up every single day and continue the fight that they've been waging since they've been 14, 13, 11 years old. And the court and the prosecutors and law enforcement and the media, nobody has been anywhere to be found. These girls have been left on an island pretty much to defend themselves and to try and get to the bottom of this. Well, not anymore. We're all here standing shoulder to shoulder with the victims at this point, and we won't stop until we have justice. And I hope that they understand that. And, 1 or 2 gnats, no big deal. 10 million gnats, well, now you can't breathe. And that's the plan, folks. We're going to smother them. We're going to keep up the pressure until they're forced to do the right thing. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. Or you can contact me on Twitter. That's BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, I'll be back later on with an evolution episode and, of course, the daily drop. Hope everybody has a great Friday.